What's going on, guys? We are here. We are talking roster mania for North America. The North America First Regional of Rlcs X will be happening this weekend. So I think it's time to start talking about the offseason. What happened in the offseason, what type of results these teams were getting, when did these subs or these new players come in, and all of that. Then we'll power rank our 10 RLCS teams, and we'll also talk about the other teams that made it through the grid, through the rival series. We'll talk about them. We won't rank them necessarily, but we'll just go through those rosters. So, something to note, I put some dates in here for the end of tournaments normally, so it might not be the exact end date that they played. And then I didn't include Astro Weeklies. I was gonna, but there are so many events that happened in North America on the offseason that it's like, it would take too long to fill in. I'll try and remember some of them, but I might get a couple wrong here or there because, you know, there's been a lot of events for North America, which also means the landscape of NA, we can kind of tell where it's at right now. Now, that's outside of the first grid. By the time this video comes out, I'm not sure what day the grid is for NA. This week, this should be out Thursday, I believe, after I talk about grid points, which we'll talk about, and you've already seen it at this point, but I haven't made that video yet. And my hair, I just showered, so there you go. Let's get into it. Let's talk about these rosters. They will be in power ranking order. So, number one, if I'm on the right thing, there we go. NRG, pretty simple. The number one team right now. Obviously, going into the Season 9 Regionals, lost in Game 7 to G2. Then the Astronaut Finals, not that great, tied for 5th. Would be last place because it was top 6 that made it to that. Spring Series, though, they battled back. They got to play G2. We didn't get to hear Landon Donovan cast enough. It was a easy sweep for G2, which they won 3-0 and had a one-game advantage. So Energy fell short to G2 once again there. Then the Brawl Invitational tied for 5th. And after that, probably the biggest roster move of the season happened. Squishy joins the team. Turbo is benched. And that is the 4-time Turbo is benched. Now, obviously, when we're talking about this roster move, Squishy, like on a Cloud9 team for a really long time, like I always thought that Squishy was not the best player on Cloud9 until probably recently. Like I thought in their prime, I felt like Gimmick generally was what would pull them through a lot of things. He's one of the best offensive players in RLCS history because of those early years on Cloud9. But I think, like, Squishy was obviously a very talented player, but I think he's kind of passed his former teammates by a pretty large sum this past season, and Energy saw that. They wanted to pick him up. Now, obviously, you bench a 4-time world champion. Well, you bring in Squishy, who basically for 2 years never finished outside the top 4 for an international LAN, only overshadowed by Turbo's Dignitas basically during that time. And obviously Squishy's won, 5 LANs as well for himself and a world championship. So he's got some chops as well. So not a bad move. Like, I don't think in the grand scheme of things, you need to re-energize this team. And it's like, this has been an ongoing issue with Turbo. I feel like that he gets complacent at times. And I think Energy was just like, hey, we need to make a move. We want, things to happen. Now, when Turbo goes to a LAN, he's incredibly clutch. Like, I don't think he's really the best player in Rocket League history, but if you're going on stage and you're going to play, I want Turbo on my team because Turbo finds a way to make goals happen. We saw that at the Season 8 World Championship. Right now, in these times with how the world is, it's not a bad idea, honestly, to be like, hey, we want to bring Squishy, re-energize this team, and get ready for the future whenever LANs happen. So, not a bad move, I don't think, and obviously the results back it up. Codename Covert, first place. Brawl 10K. They got second behind Turbo and Envy. Then BTS, the Summer Shuffle, they got another first. ESPN Invitational, another first. Their one blemish was the grid number 1 with very surprising result on August 8th, which was just, last week. Tied for 13th. Came in last. The loss to the Sonics got swept. And then lost again. I can't remember exactly who they lost to in the other one. It's, my mind is drawing a blank. But still, the grid that happens. Now my wife is texting me because I think she's about to come home, and we're going to get a lot of messages here. So, okay. So, we got that. So that was the only blemish. You still have to put Energy number 1. Their offseason was so great that they are the team to beat going into the season. Everyone knows this at this point. For a while there, in that stretch of Codename Covert to the ESPN Invitational, they were 21-2 or something like that in series with Squishy. So definitely the team to beat. Easily my number 1 here. Moving on to number 2, and now I always lose these things. There we go. I don't know why that's happening, but Space Station Gaming gets my number 2. This is another pickup that was pretty surprising. Like, it wasn't surprising because of the rumors going around, but eventually, you know, like if you didn't know about any of that, it would have been surprising. So Space Station got second at the regionals. Honestly, it was like Space Station kind of choked in that regionals. Not really choked, but they didn't play up to their potential, I should say. Like, G2 obviously played well, but Space Station did not play like Space Station. The Astronaut Season 1 Finals, they got third. Spring Series, they got fourth. Brawl Invitational, they got first. Codename Covert, second. As you can see, a trend here. Basically, always top three. They've won fourth in the Spring Series, but this team was very good with AXB. Brawl 10K, tied for third. BTS, they got tied for fifth. They're worst showing in the entire offseason, and that's when Rlcs comes in and AXB is kicked. Now, Rlcs, he joined, I believe they won an Astro Weekly right before he officially joined, and they're like, all right, we're going to bring him on. The ESPN Invitational then with Rlcs, they got a tied for third. The Grid number one, they got a first place finish, and that's what bumps them up to number two. I think there would have been probably more of an argument for, like, there's a couple teams in this area, like Envy and Rogue probably, that you could be like, who could get number two? It's kind of a little bit of a mixed bag. But because of that grid finish, I'm going to give them the first place, or number two behind Energy. It's basically everyone else that's not Energy. But when it comes to this roster move, I like this roster move. I think Rlcs very closely the same as Squishy, where he was the best on his team by far. And I mean, leaps and bounds better than what Squishy did, I think, with Cloud9. And he's always been so incredibly solid. Like, even on land, he's an incredibly solid player. My one issue is, which I don't think will be an issue, obviously, is the boost control. Rlcs and Arsenal use a ton of boost. So they just got to make sure they manage that, and I think they'll be perfectly fine. But this team is definitely a force to be reckoned with. I expect them to be one of the more consistent teams throughout, as you can see with their results. You know, top fours, one tied for fifth. When it comes to a Swiss, I would be shocked if Space Station did not make the bracket stage with Energy. Because, again, if you're consistent, you have to lose 3 times in one day. Now, the only issue is, obviously, Rlcs kind of built a team around him and then just kind of abandoned that team when things weren't going too well by trying out for all these other teams. That's the only issue, where sometimes I think Rlcs, like, maybe it's more of a persona, not really sure, but he's a very cocky player. If they start losing on a day, will that snowball, will that morale snowball down? Will Rlcs snowball that team down? That's the only thing I worry about. I don't think it's a huge issue, but that's something that could happen. But I think Space Station is pretty much a lock to me for playoff brackets in all 3 of the regionals. So number 2 for them. Envy, big moves as well for them. So the regionals, they tied for third. Unfortunately, that this was with Ghost Gaming. This was the first time they made the World Championship in, 5 seasons, where they kept finishing 5th or 6th every single season. So the one season where there is no World Championship, well, they fall short. Well, not fall short. They actually make it, but there is no World Championship. So that kind of sucks for them. And one thing I always didn't really care for on Ghost is I always felt like they kicked the wrong player. Pretty much for like 4 seasons straight, I'm like, they should have kicked the other guy before that guy. I'm not sure what they're doing. I think this is the first time where I can 100% agree, like, no, you kick Illusion for whoever you want. That's not saying Illusion is bad. I'm just saying Atomic and Miss, I think, are on a whole nother level. And I think Illusion, he was getting there. His mechanics are insane. It's just a little bit inconsistent. I feel like he's very similar to AXB, where, like, AXB had a great season, but there are times when it's just like, where is he on the field? And that happened a lot in the Season 9 regional final with AXB. A lot of bad misses there. And I feel like that happens here or there with Illusion as well. So I could see why you would want to pick up a more consistent player. And they pick up Turbo Pulsa later on down the line on June 20th. But Ghosts, they switch over to Envy. They get tied for fifth, Spring Series and Brawl Invitational and Codename Covert. So 3 results in a row. That is not great for them after coming, top 4 and then going in the grand finals of the Astronaut Finals. So that is not good for them. That's when they make a move. They go to the Brawl 10K, the one where they beat Energy, first place with Turbo Pulsa. Obviously, when that happens, you're going to pick up Turbo Pulsa. Turbo Pulsa joins. And for Envy, like, as an org, when you see Turbo Pulsa, when he's available, you're going to pick him up. So that's what they did. Illusion is benched, and so on and so forth. He leaves the team later on down the line. Then we go to BTS. They get a 4th place finish, so a little bit better. They're at least getting back into that top 4 conversation. ESPN Invitational tied for 3rd. The Grid number 1. Grand Finals, number 2, which is very good. Now, again, Very consistent results. Like if we compare this with Space Station, very similar. Space Station, all top fours, one tied fifth. The only thing is they have those 3 tied fifths in a row, but at least it's still fifth. It's not down, tied for ninth, tied for seventh, down in like those last place spots when it's an invitational. So they're still consistent results. So that makes their power ranking number 3 for me. This is another team where, now who knows, maybe, because we've seen Europe and their regional, how things got crazy. I don't know how that's going to play out in NA. I feel like we have more consistent teams in NA, and maybe there's not as much talent down near the bottom. So I think Envy is another one of those teams that I would be surprised if they didn't make bracket. A little bit less surprised, obviously, in Space Station and Energy, but I expect them to be there at the end of the day. In terms of, obviously brings great leadership to that team. It's still a very young team with Atomic and Mist. Obviously, Mist has won a DreamHack, but Atomic, still relatively young. But he's been 2 seasons of the Rlcs. He did improve from his rookie season, which basically every rookie does when they come in. So he kept that train going. But this is a great team. I think that they'll be just fine. Number 4, Rogue. Rogue is my first team where I'm like, all right, I'm not sold yet. I get it. They've had great results. But this is a team I think will be inconsistent throughout, and I could see them missing out on a bracket. I could see them with a day 1 exit. Obviously, I think that's very unlikely, but I don't see that with any of the other teams we've talked about so far. I just don't see that happening, but who knows? I could be wrong. March 28th, Season 9, they finish in 8th. They do okay in the promotion tournament to survive in the RLCS. The Astronaut Season 1 finals, they tied for 5th. That was last place. Then Turnturo joins. Wonder is bench. I think that this was a move everyone was expecting, that Wonder would be gone. It's just who are you going to pick up? So they pick up Turnturo from Charlotte Phoenix, who's probably the best player there. Looked fantastic throughout the promotion tournament, so they pick him up. Very solid mechanical player, but he's young. And you got to mold that. So now Kronovi is first killer and Turnturo that has got to mold. Spring Series 3rd, Brawl Invitational tied for 3rd. Now, this was Kronovi's offseason. He played fantastic through pretty much all his offseason, outside of probably the grid, which is a great sign. When he's looking good, Rogue is going to be fine. Because I think first killer is always going to look great. Turnturo is going to be hit or miss from time to time. And I think that's where the inconsistencies lie. Mostly in Turnturo and sometimes Crow. I think first killer is going to give you a solid top 5 to top 10 NA player every single week, and sometimes will look like the best player on the field. So I'm not worried about first killer. Brawl Invitational tied for 3rd. My only worry is maybe if first killer is getting frustrated and starts ball chasing all that. That's the only worry. Codename Covert tied for 7th, but they were playing with Corrupted G because Turnturo went on vacation. Brawl 10K tied for 5th with Corrupted G. Again, Turnturo on vacation. Corrupted G was not coming into play. But then they signed Corrupted G as coach, which is pretty solid. Like after playing with the team and getting to know them, it's a very smart move for them. And Corrupted G, obviously, a lot of respect to him in the scene. So very good coach and pick up there. Then Turnturo, he comes back from vacation, go to the BTS, they get a 3rd place finish. ESPN Invitational, number 2. Now the reason why they're down at number 4, the grid number 1 finish, tied for 9th. They had a very bad showing there. And obviously their team was pretty good. Top 3 finishes. Then obviously you kind of throw out the Corrupted G results. Like they're actually decent, which is nice. But you throw those out. But I think the grid number 1, with it so close to the season and the other team so incredibly close to them, that's why I have them number 4. Like if they were to finish probably in bracket stage of the grid, I might have bumped them up to number 3. It's hard to tell between them, MV, and Space Station. They're all incredibly close. But I'm mostly going off the grid number 1. Space Station did the best, then MV, then Rogue. And obviously Space Station and MV did really well. They made the finals, So that's why Rogue gets bumped down to number 4. But a great offseason for them, probably the best offseason they've ever had. We'll see if they can continue that when they get into the season. Obviously, grid 1, not a great result. A Crow was not happy on Twitter saying, like, hey, that's the worst we've played. It will not happen again. So we'll see what happens there. Number 4, though, I could see them being a little bit inconsistent, though, and this is where we're going to get more into the inconsistent teams. Speaking of inconsistent, G2. March 28th, Season 9 Regionals, they get first place. They beat Energy in 7. They win versus Space Station. I go for the perfect 11-0 with G2 on the season, getting their wins or losses predicted perfectly. Fantastic. Astronaut, Season 1 Finals, first. Spring Series, first. You get the trend. Then all members leave the team house. This should not have that big of an effect, except for Chicago, who's moving to the West Coast. So I understand that. Then Codename Covert happens 9th. Brawl 10K, they get a tied for 3rd. So 9th for Codename Covert is terrible. That's basically last place. Actually, I think there might have been 16 in there, so maybe not exactly last place, but they didn't make it to the bracket stage, which is not great. Brawl 10K, they get tied for 3rd. Okay. That's respectable. You can't win every tournament. But after that, then you go to the Summer Shuffle, tied for 7th out of, 10 teams or something? I don't know. Or actually, there might have been more. But whatever. Still not a great finish for a team like G2. ESPN Invitational, tied for 7th. And then the grid number 1, tied for 3rd. That's when they were back into the team house. I think with Chicago, we went back, before BTS, I believe. And then the rest of the boys came sometime after. They didn't really post on Twitter. Obviously, no roster moves here. It's the only team of the big guns that didn't make a roster move. So Rizzo, JNFs, and Chicago, don't have to worry about that. But my power ranking, number 5. They're obviously a threat. They're obviously were the best in NA. So you got to give them a little bit leeway there. Obviously, their results have not been great. After that. That also includes some, astronaut weeklies and stuff where they bombed out. So not great. But they turned it around in the grid number 1. But obviously, that's not enough for me yet, obviously, just because of how bad it's been. They're back in the team house. We'll see what happens. But I would put them, right around that 4 or 5 range. Now, obviously, as the season goes on, who knows? Maybe G2 gets back into form. But the one thing I don't really like is that I think it was last season, after Season 8 or Season 7, when they're in the finals, JNF's like, hey, we got complacent. I'm pretty sure it was JNF's. I might be getting this wrong. I'm going to look it up. We got complacent. We're not going to let that happen again. What do they do? So Season 8 obviously didn't go their way. Season 9, they win regionals. What do? They take a long break. They get complacent again. What are you doing? What are you doing, G2? And maybe they can do that. Maybe they can take a long break while everyone else is grinding and then come back and be back at top. But I don't think that's the case. And I think that is very risky. And I'm not sure exactly how long the break was. Obviously, if they leave the team house, that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. Obviously, go home to your families. It's a weird time. Do all that. But it seemed like, they were taking some time off, not really playing Rocket League as much, and then they come back. And we saw in some of these events, these guys are just missing the ball. Something you didn't see before. So it seemed like they took a decent amount of break. We'll see if they're back, but I just don't like that, hey, we were complacent. It's not going to happen again, and then they do it all over again. After they're on top. It's I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me, but Rizzo, JNFs, and Chicago, my power ranking to number 5. Moving on, EUnited, pretty good offseason for them, but we got to talk about some things here. So Season 9, they get 9th. They release Rlcs. I think that was the right move, definitely to try and pick up someone else. Ajax and Haksha really elevated their game, while Rlcs, I felt kind of plateaued. So he kind of retired. I'm not sure if he's actually on a team right now. He's coaching. He's coaching for a team. I can't remember which team. I think it's the Sonics. I could be wrong. There's a lot of stuff going on in my head. Sorry, guys. I'm also trying to move into a house and all this stuff. Whatever. Spring Series, they get 9th, which means they miss out. They just missed out on the qualifiers. They played with memory. Brawl Invitational, tied for 5th. Pretty good result. Codename Covert, 3rd. Pretty good result. Brawl 10K, tied for 13th. Okay. Not great. Then they signed memory. And we'll get back to memory in a bit. But they signed memory here. Makes sense. Pretty decent results. Okay. We'll talk about why the... All right. We'll wait. We go to the Summer Shuffle. They get tied for 7th, which is it's still better than what EUnited was. It's obviously not what they were doing earlier with the Brawl Invitational and Covert. Then Memory's released, and Wonder Mike joins. Now, there's very few players in Rocket League where I would say, all right, we're in between seasons of the RLCS. You got to lock this guy down now. You got to get him to sign a contract, right? No offense to Memory. Memory is not one of those players. I have no idea why EUnited would sign Memory so early. And then that means he's probably on the payroll, and they got to pay him before the season's even announced. What are you doing? Just play with him throughout the offseason. Memory's obviously going to want to play with you guys because he wants to be, one of those RLCS teams. And again, no offense to Memory. Probably not getting a ton of other offers. Maybe he was at the time. Maybe the Sonics were looking at him or something. I'm not sure. But how do you sign a player? And then a month later, exactly on the day, which means he probably was on contract for exactly 1 month and got paid whatever it was, you release him before a season even starts. What are you doing, EUnited? I get you want to pick up Wonder Mike. That makes perfect sense. But then don't sign a player like Memory. Again, with Envy, you sign Turboposa. Obviously, you lock that guy down. For Energy, you sign Squishy. You lock that guy down. Memory? Really? I don't know what's going on with EUnited. That was a very, very, very bad move throughout the offseason. It looks bad. It's not great for Memory. Memory, great guy. He like even said on Twitter, like, I don't want to start beef. Like, obviously Hawks are like right around the same time. His father passed like unexpectedly, so our thoughts out to Hawks are obviously he's part of the Rocket League family. We all hurt with him, so Memory didn't want to like get into the beef. That's a stand-up guy right there, Memory. So great job for him. But he has every right to be pissed, every single right. But hey, like EUnited, like I think they were trying to do something nice, like a feel good, like we're gonna sign a player early, we're gonna get him paid. It just makes no business sense at all. I don't know. Wonder Mike joins on July 3rd. Then August 8th, the grid number 1, they get tied for 5th. Pretty good spot. Wonder Mike, I think, is a fantastic player. He's one of those up-and-coming players. We're seeing that a lot. We saw that a lot in Europe. I get why they would want to go with Wonder Mike. I think it is the better move than Memory. When they first picked up Memory, I thought they were going to do a lot worse than they did because more defensive-oriented and EUnited, very defensive. So they actually did better than I thought they would, but they pick up Wonder Mike. Then they get tied for 5th in the grid, which is good. So Hawkser, Ajax, and Wonder Mike. My power ranking of number 6. Because, again, pretty quality results. And then tied for 5th in the grid. Not bad. All right, moving on. Version 1, also known as Rat Enterprises. March 28th, as Cloud9. They got the 6th place finish in the regionals. They barely made playoffs. They had to make this awesome run, and then obviously fell short. Spring Series tied for 21st. I believe there was internet issues with Torment. He has moved since all those internet issues, so that shouldn't be a problem. But a lot of them are having internet issues. So that's why they got tied for 21st there. Brawl Invitational, they played with Chicago as like a joke team. It was called Cloud 2, and they did really well. They made it to the finals. Then, which was without Squishy. Then Cloud9 releases their roster. At the same time, Squishy leaves. Basically, probably, which I don't know for sure, is Cloud9 sold Squishy to Energy. And then they're like, well, there's no point in having this roster anymore. So they left. So they got a payment for Squishy to Energy. And then they let the team just do whatever. Then they played with a bunch of different people to try and figure out who they wanted. Codename Covert, they got tied for 9th with Rlcs. Pretty much none of these results were very good. Tied for 9th with Illusion in the Brawl 10K. Tied for 11th with Wonder Mike. Tied for 5th in the ESPN Invitational with AXP. Finally, they got a decent result. And this is when, like AXP, he just got on the market, so they wanted to pick him up. And solid choice. I fully agree. I think AXP is a great player. Rlcs probably, chose Space Station over a team like Version 1. So that's one thing. Wonder Mike, it depends. I'm not really sure exactly where that was exactly, because Wonder Mike went to EUnited Version 1. It's like, I'm not sure exactly how that all worked out. But AXP joins. I think they probably wanted AXP over Wonder Mike, more consistent. He's been around. They want to try and just have a veteran team and do well throughout a long, long season. Makes sense. Very similar to what Team Liquid's doing, where they're like, let's go for the veteran. Obviously, that didn't work out in Regional 1, but we'll see if that continues. Torment and Gimmick, not the greatest offseason. I felt like they kept playing kind of poorly. They finally started picking it up, though, with the ESPN Invitational and the grid number 1. Like, Gimmick scored one of the craziest goals, and he still has that in him from time to time, but at times they look a little shaky. So we'll see how they do. I think right now, number 7 makes sense. You could put them ahead of EUnited. It's, very, very close. Because, their offseason was more of, trying to find the right roster. I don't know. I just have a number 7. I would basically put these two tied. I don't think it's really a huge deal there. But Version 1, number 7, not sold on this team. I think they can have some good tournaments and probably get some top 4s here or there once in a while. But they could also miss out on bracket stage. I think they'll be one of those teams, flirting anywhere from 4th or tied for 3rd, if they have a good bracket, to bombing out in the top 16. Next up, the Sonics. So obviously there's a huge gap now from Version 1 to the Sonics, and I want to make this clear. I talked about the Sonics a lot this offseason. They kept getting invited to stuff, and I'm like, why do you guys keep inviting this team to anything? It was 3 months, and they didn't beat anyone. But in Season 9 Regionals, they got 5th. That was after a great start. Then they cooled down, and then they just got dominated in the playoffs. It was actually the worst MVP showing in playoff history, and that was Shock. Shock didn't get much better throughout the offseason until the very end in the grid, number 1, which is a good sign for them. Spring Series tied for 11th, so didn't make it. Brawl Invitational tied for 5th. Codename Covert tied for 13th. Brawl 10K tied for 9th. You see what's happening here. Obviously 13. I didn't put 13th. We got to start this whole video over. Then Dapper's released. So that's when they release him, and then they go with Illusion for BTS. They get 15th, which I believe actually, I think there was 15 teams or 16. I can't remember. They had a weird bracket. So again, not a great showing there. Then the grid number 1 with J. Russ, and obviously there were some Astro Weeklies and stuff in between here. They get a tied for 3rd finish, which is a great sign that they're turning it around, but it's one tournament. And honestly, they were so abysmal throughout this offseason that it was like, Now this also does not include rival series teams. There would be a bunch of rival series teams above the Sonics and above the rest of these RLCS teams if I was including them in my power ranking. So keep that in mind. But J. Russ comes over, very solid player. I'm not sold on this team still anyway. I think Shock and Sathy, Shock had a fantastic season. Let's see if he can do that again. A lot of what Sonics were doing was very, very defensive, very lucky counterattack style. Very similar to what EUnited did the season prior when they made the World Championship, and then they kind of fell apart. Very similar to what Veloce did where they made the World Championship, then they fell apart a little bit the next season, even though they changed it a little bit more to the offensive side. I've never sold on teams like that, so we'll see how they do here. Number 8 in my power rankings. Next up, we'll try to make this a little quicker. We're already 25 minutes in. The Peeps. Peeps, old Pittsburgh Knights. We'll get into that in a little bit. But Season 9, they got 7th. They went to go play golf. No promotion tournament, no playoff. Astronaut Season 1 Finals 4th. Spring Series tied for 5th. Brawl Invitational tied for 3rd. Not bad results. But then Rlcs turned into the town bicycle. Everyone gets a ride. And he begins playing with every single team in NA. Wanted to get out so badly. Then Codename and Covert, they tied 9th with Alpine. And then I think Rlcs actually came back for one of the Astro Weeklies. Played with Gyro and Illusion, I think. But whatever. Brawl 10K tied for 5th with Mundo Mike, and I forgot to write with Alraz, but hey, whatever. So tied for 5th there, but then Mundo Mike obviously chose greener pastures. Then Pittsburgh Knights, they dropped Peeps on August 6th, and Illusion joins. Very solid pickup. Illusion, sure, I was discrediting him a little bit on Envy. Still a top 10 team-worthy player. Then August 8th, the grid number 1 tied for 9th. Kind of sits exactly where I think they'll be, just outside playoffs usually. Gyro, AJ, and Illusion. And obviously Gyro and AJ didn't have the greatest season last time. Rlcs really carried them. And the only times they looked good, I felt like, was when Rlcs really dragged them to look good. But it's a new season. You never know. We'll see if they can turn it around. But obviously they have pop-off potential as well. But I just think generally they're going to finish outside the playoff bracket. So number 9 on my power rankings. Again, does not include rivals series teams. Now, the reason why they're number 9 is because of the grid finish. The Sonics would have been below them if they didn't finish so well in the grid. That's the only reason why Peeps and Sonics are this way. Next up, Alpine. Rival Season 9 first. The only other team in RLCS to not make a roster move. And I think that could cost them. So they were Omni Nation. Then they ceased operation. Spring Series, they got tied for 17th. That's not a good finish. Brawl Invitational tied for 9th. Not a good finish. Codename Covert tied for 7th. Okay. They're starting to creep up. Then Alpine Esports picks up the old Affinity roster, because obviously after Omnination went Affinity, then Alpine. Brawl 10K tied for 25th. Hey guys, not a good result. BTS tied for 11th. I'm actually shocked they were even there, but I guess because they're an RLCS team. ESPN Invitational tied for 5th. Again, I was shocked they got invited, but they did. So they got tied for 5th, which is good. Not bad of a result there. Then the grid number 1 tied for 13th, which means last place. Percy, Magic Bear, and Jordan. At times, they've shown these guys can play, but Magic Bear, I think, is the highlight on this team. Watch out for him. If they're going to make a run, I think it'll be on Magic Bear. Maybe Percy as well. But right now, the results don't back it up. I get the idea of, hey, we just made RLCS. Let's not make a roster move yet. But now it's a full year. Probably could have used one. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe I'm just, BM and Jordan here a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see. So number 10 on power rankings for Alpine. Moving on, Pittsburgh Knights, the new Pittsburgh Knights. Rivals Season 9, they finished in 4th. That was absolute leverage. Then they switched to Valence. Mundo Mike leaves, so they lose their star player. Spring Series tied for 13th with Luke. Brawl Invitational tied with 19th with Alpha Cap. And this is going to be a lot of these rival series teams did this. They kept changing players like crazy. Then J-Rush. He joins for Codename Covert, tied for 13th. Brawl 10K, tied for 17th. As you can see, no good results at all. Tied for 13th for the BTS Summer Shuffle. Then ZPS joins, and J-Russ leaves for Greener Pastures. Pittsburgh Knights picks up Valence. And then in the grid number 1, they got at least tied for 9th, which is not a terrible result, but that's, that means they won one game. So Rodoko, Akinta, and ZPS. I don't expect much from this team yet. But who knows? Maybe they grow throughout the season. Obviously, they're young. They're going to get a lot more RLCS level competition. It's possible. I don't think I ordered these teams in any really particular order, so don't mind what order they're in. But we're going to see this a lot with a lot of these rival series teams. Next up, Charlotte Phoenix. Season 9. Top 2 finish. Then they don't make it through the promotion tournament. They lose their best player, Taranturo. Spring Series, tied for 7th with Wonder Mike. Then Brawl Invitational with Wonder Mike as well. Tied for 9th. Tied for 17th. So some okay results, and then they started to peter off again. Then Wonder Mike leaves. Then Aeon plays with them for the Brawl 10K, tied for 17th. Not great. BTS 10th with Dapper. Okay, not bad. Then Dapper, he officially signs, which is, okay. We'll add Dapper. I don't think it's the greatest move, but also a lot of the other players have kind of left. And I think Dapper is still a quality player. I just, it's not anything that's going to wow you when you lose turn 2. The grid number 1 tied for 13th, which means last place. Karma, Shadow, and Dapper will be on the field there. I don't expect too much. I just hope they don't whiff. Charlotte Phoenix always does this. They always play well, and then they whiff on the easiest plays and lose the series. Please. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Just do well once in a while. I'll give them 1 playoff bracket out of the 3 we get in the regionals. Omelet. It seems good. Rivals, Season 9, 6th. Then, Spring Series, tied for 17th with Rapid. J-Rush leaves. Brawl Invitational, tied for 19th with Spider. Again, we're going to see a lot of different faces here. Codename Covert with ZPS, tied for 5th. Brawl 10K, tied for 9th with LJ. Again, a lot of different players. Mirage then changes to Omelet. Lion Blaze joins the grid number 1, tied for 5th. They also have had pretty good results in Astro Terms. I believe they have a win. Luke and Joe Freshness and Lion Blaze. So these guys pop off potential. Again, I don't expect to see them in every single playoff bracket, but if there's a rival series team that I would hang my hat on to make some noise, it would be Omelet. I think they're a pretty solid team. Plot twist, Season 9, 5th. Spring Series tied for 17th. Corrupted G leaves and kicks, whatever. It's kind of the same thing. They mutually decided to part ways. Brawl Invitational tied for 13th with Sosa. One of the few teams that picked up someone right away and kept them. Codename Covert tied for 9th. Tied for 17th, Brawl 10K. Tied for 5th, though, BTS. Then ESPN tied for 7th. Again, not terrible. And the grid number 1 tied for 9th. So, some results where they're getting into the mix here with the RLCS team. So, not bad. Toroko, Mektos, and Sosa. This team, again, I think is probably my number 2 coming out of the rival series. Behind Omelet. And I think they can make noise here or there. We'll see if they can make some runs. X-Set, rival series, Season 9, 3rd. Then Andy and Heck leave. So that was with the old Stromboli roster where they had a 4-man roster and all that stuff. So 2 players leave there. Spring Series tied for 13th with Stokely. Then J-Rush comes over for 1 tournament as well. Tied for 15th. Brawl Invitational. Alpha Cap then joins and they lock in their roster. Codename Covert tied for 13th. Brawl 10K tied for 13th. BTS 9th. Not the greatest results there. Mostly on the outer edge. And obviously if you have no top 8 results, you're not going to make a bracket stage, right? So we'll see. We'll see. But J-Pal, Auraz, and Alpha Cap, not a terrible team. And again, this could be the year of growth for these rival series teams, but we've seen weirder things in Europe already, so you never know. And I think that's it. No, I'm sorry, one more. Kansas City Pioneers. So they were the old flight roster. They came in 10th. Brawl Invitational. I didn't write anything in. Cool. So I don't think they did very well. Memory leaves at that point to join EUnited. Poor memory. Oh, poor memory. Codename Covert tied 13th with Aeon. They bring Aeon back. This was a clown fiesta. Then Rapid, Seabass, and Beast Mode are acquired by KC Pioneers. They got this pretty picture. They're on an airplane. All this stuff. Seabass. Oh, my poor boy. BTS tied for 13th with Noxus. Memory joins back. Seabass is now benched, and he's on the team still, but he's benched. But because Memory joined back after he left, it's still 2/3 of the flight roster. Rapid, Memory, and Beast Mode. And the grid number 1, they got tied for 13th. We'll see. This was a clown fiesta of a roster, probably the weirdest one out of all of them. I don't expect too much here, but, they were in the RLCS. Maybe they haven't, emerged yet, but maybe they will. Who knows? But it's great to have another org in there. So Kansas City Pioneers, welcome. And there you go. Top 16 teams all playing in the grid every single week. There's other teams, obviously. You got the 72-pin connector. You have a few other ones that can make some noise, but we'll get to them when we see them, if they do well in the Swiss tournaments. But I think that's it. I'm going to just hit right one more time. Yeah, we got Vitality then. Okay, so that's it. So those are your teams for NA, the roster mania. There's a lot of teams that are like, you either lost your best player or you picked up a player to upgrade that you kicked the team. Let's go through that really quick. So we'll see how this all worked out. So Energy, I would say they tried to upgrade their team with Squishy. I would say that's an argument to be had. Space Station, they tried to upgrade their team as well with Rlcs, and they kicked AXP. Then Turbopulsa, another upgrade for Envy, and no surprise, these are your top 3 teams. Rogue, another upgrade. Pick up Turn Turtle for Wonder. Top 4 teams. G2 didn't make any moves. Number 5. Number 6, Hoxer, Ajax, and Wonder Mike. They tried to upgrade as well. Again, seems like a common trend. When you're trying to upgrade a player, you're going to have better results. It's not that big of a surprise. Number 7, version 1, they got a downgrade. They lost Squishy. They picked up AXP. Again, though, a solid player, and could have been number 6. But this is where you start seeing some downgrades here. J-Rush, I think they tried to upgrade, though, for the Sonics. So a lot of these RLCS teams trying to bring in either new talent or talent from other teams. So I'd say an upgrade there, but it hasn't really resulted in much, except for that one grid finish. Peeps downgrade with Illusion for Rlcs. That's why they're down at number 9. Alpine didn't make any moves. Then all these Rival Series teams basically lost their best players for the most part. Wonder Mike leaves from the Pittsburgh Knights. Turtle leaves from Charlotte Phoenix. Omelette, they lose J-Rush, but it's looking okay for them. So, like, maybe they lost a good player, but, you know, they're at least looking okay. Plot Twist, they tried to upgrade, so you could call that one an upgrade with Corrupted G leaving. But Exit, they had a weird team anyway. I'm not really sure. We'll call it a side grade. Maybe they tried to upgrade as well with Alpha Kep. And then this team is just Clown Fiesta. I guess kind of an upgrade too. Like a lot of teams, I guess, we're trying to like get rid of that third best player on their team. We see a lot of players leaving the scene, at least in terms of these teams. But we'll see if any of them make some moves. Like Wonder could make a move, who knows, and make some plays happen throughout the Swiss system. 'Cause he's on a team. I'm not sure what team it is. I can't remember. But if they do well, I'll talk about them. But that's it for the NA Roster Mania. This is a long video, guys. 37 minutes. Thank you guys for watching. Enjoy. Lots of North America Great Rocket League. The grid's on one of these days this week. There's so much going on. It's crazy. Then the regional will finally begin. We'll see Swiss. We'll see it exactly like Europe for 2 weekends. Go check it out. G2 fans, I'm sorry. Goodbye.